All right. Welcome to everybody out there. I'm Will Cutbirth, and this is the Private Murphy Show. It's our inaugural broadcast, and I'd like to have everybody I'd like to welcome everybody to the show. Today, I'm going to cover a topic that's near and dear to my heart. For some of you that go to school with me here at Ottawa University, we're kind of sheltered in the way that we look at things. You know, we go to class every day and things of that nature. But I've got something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to talk about it today a little bit. Some of you may know from in class, I was in the Army for 3 years, and I spent a few years in Korea and 6 months in Iraq. Well, what I'm going to talk about happened in Iraq, and it was a day that changed my life forever. On the 9th of January 2005, my company, my military police company, was out on patrol on an MSR, which is a main supply route outside of Abu Ghraib prison. We were responsible for an area south of Fallujah to Abu Ghraib, and if you guys want to kind of understand and orient yourself, that's fine. You can go find it on a map. Basically, what we were doing there is we were trying to guard the main supply routes from enemy insurgents, and the 9th of January sticks out because, well, it was the day that changed my life forever because I was almost killed that day. People say, "Oh man, almost died going to work." My own car slid off the road. No, I literally mean I almost died. I had a carotid artery wound injury as the gunner in a Humvee, and I had two gentlemen in my vehicle that saved my life that day. They've gone unrecognized for way too long by the Army, but they will never go unrecognized in my eyes. This is kind of my way of getting the injustice out and letting everybody know what's going on. And here's my story. Alright. We were out on patrol that day, and it was the last day after the Marines had already taken down the city of Fallujah. And we were out on patrol. We were headed north on MSR 1, or MSR Supply Route Mobile. And we were going through, I think it was checkpoint 15 or checkpoint 15, and it has an overpass, and it's kind of a way for the locals there to be able to cross back and forth and get from one side of the freeway to the other. The interstate we were guarding is more like a two-lane divided highway. In other words, it had 4 lanes of traffic, 2 southbound, 2 northbound, and then there was a median in the middle that divided both the north and the southbound lanes. We were, as I said before, we were headed northbound, and everything looked great. There was nothing in the way. There was no debris, no nothing. So we continued on north. Nothing out of the ordinary. It just seemed to be a very uneventful day. Well, we went up to Fallujah, to the Cloverleaf, where we were responsible for our northernmost area, and we decided that about time to turn back around. So we turned back around, went back through. It had been about 15 minutes since we'd been through that checkpoint that I mentioned earlier, checkpoint 15. And I noticed all of us noticed a box on the side of the road, which brought our little convoy to a halt. And we called it in to our higher-ups and whatnot. This was probably I think it's probably lucky number 13 that I had been involved with. IEDs were not suspected IEDs were not a common, were a fairly routine call. I mean, it's something we dealt with on a daily basis, sometimes 2 or 3 a day, and 90% of them were false alarms, or they weren't what we thought they were, but we were overly cautious, and rightfully so. Well, we noticed that there was vehicles headed northbound on the opposite side, and we decided that there was no need to have civilian traffic running in there just in case it was a live IED and it was active. So we decided we got the clearance to cross the median and go across the road and set up the block civilian traffic before we can get EOD, which is explosive ordnance disposal, to come out. And they take care of all the IEDs or suspected IEDs, and they're the one that tells. Basically, they're the bomb squad. And I was watching the box with a pink and yellow flower pattern on it, and as we were starting to cross the median, I noticed there was a brilliant flash of light. I mean, I'd never seen a flash of light this bright in my entire life. And about that time, felt heat, and then everything went deafening quiet, and I felt myself get picked up out of the turret and kind of thrown to the side of the vehicle, so much so that I kind of had to pick myself back up and kind of put myself back in the turret. It was such a violent explosion. I didn't realize what exactly had happened because it happened so quick, and I had never been involved in something like that up until that point. And I remember the right side of my neck all of a sudden, for some reason, started burning. I just thought maybe I had whiplash or something like that, or I had damaged like just a sore muscle type deal, and it just kind of burned a little bit. But when I turned my head, a red dot shot from my neck, and I thought, oh my goodness, what the heck was that? And so I put my hand up there, and my neck felt like it was covered in water or liquid, and I thought, I'm not really sweating that bad. And when I pulled my hand back, the look of shock on my face, because there was blood all over my hand, and amazement was it's undescribable. About that time, my neck started to get really tight. It started to burn real bad. So I was trying to talk, and I was having a hard time doing that. And so I ducked down inside the turret, and on my way down inside the turret, I vividly remember hitting my chin, and I ended up with stitches in my chin just from that. But I hit it pretty violently, and it kind of stunned me and knocked me off my feet a little bit. And I remember Staff Sergeant Norman is sitting in the front passenger seat, and he's checking himself out. I remember looking at him, and he's checking to see if his arms and limbs everything was okay. And Sergeant John Charleston, had exited the vehicle on the left side of the vehicle to check and see if the vehicle was in running condition, and see if anything was out of the ordinary. And evidently he was okay. And I remember him turning around. I remember Sergeant Norman turning around and asking if Cuzzle was okay. Well, that was his nickname for me. And I could not get out that something was wrong, but he could see the panic in my eyes, I think. Either that or else he saw I was bleeding, I'm not sure. But it was just one of those situations where there really wasn't a whole lot of communication needed. I don't remember how all the details and how Sergeant Norman ended up in the driver's seat, but I do remember getting tackled into the back seat through the driver's seat when Sergeant Norman had told Charleston that I was hurt. I remember I was profusely bleeding from my neck. Remember, I had a right carotid artery laceration at this point, which means that the carotid artery on the right side of my neck was no longer intact. In other words, it was completely cut, for you non-medical people out there. And I was dying. I remember being tackled into the back seat, and I remember him grabbing out my first aid pack and grabbing my first aid bandage and holding it very tightly against my neck. So much so, he was actually kind of cutting off my airway. So, in my panicked mood or moment, I actually ended up punching him in the face about 3 times in order, trying to get an airway, trying to get some breath. But what he was doing was actually trying to clamp off all the blood flow from my neck, which was quite a gruesome sight. Um, I remember with the hearing on the radio before I passed out from blood loss that a medevac had been denied because the area was declared hostile. So I was probably 5 to 10 minutes away from any kind of medical aid by ground. But I really needed some serious medical attention. The place that they ended up taking me was back to Abu Ghraib prison, which is where we were based out of for the Operation Phantom Fury that we were involved in. And when on the way back, I remember a plume of smoke coming out from the side of the vehicle, and I remember asking, "What was that?" And I always remember getting the answer was, "Don't you worry about it. We got it handled." Okay, well that's fine and dandy. And Charleston was trying to tell me to, stop fighting him and help him hold the pressure against my neck. So I thought I was helping him do that, but evidently I was not very much helpful. I wasn't very helpful in that situation or moment. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm hurt bad, and I needed to make sure that just in case that I didn't pull through this, that my wife needed to know I loved her. And I started to reach for a letter that she had sent me that I kept in my pocket. And I tried to get it out, and he saw me grabbing for it because he knew I had it. He knew where I kept it. And he said, no, no, no. Don't you give that to me. You're going to tell her yourself. And I said, very last things I think I remember saying, and saying well enough that he was able to hear me, was, make sure you tell my wife I love her. And he said, no, I'm not going to tell her. You're going to tell her. And shortly thereafter, I blacked out. I don't remember anything more other than that was the 9th of January. I didn't wake up until the 13th of January of 2005 when I was at Walter Reed. I had several surgeries later. I had repaired my right carotid artery, and they had taken a left thigh graft from the vein in my leg, and had transplanted it and put it on my neck. And that's something that I'll never forget, waking up in the intensive care unit there at Walter Reed, and my wife was sitting right next to me, and first thing I said to her, I said, "What are you doing in Iraq?" And she laughed, and she said, "I'm not in Iraq." And then it was starting to look a little fuzzier, and it looked like there was snow outside, and I thought, "Oh my goodness, where am I?" So I wasn't able to communicate as well as I thought I was able to at first. I had to write down some of my messages. So one of my messages I wrote down was, "Where was I?" And I knew something was definitely wrong, because when I wrote it, it looked like a first grader trying to write for the very first time. The letters were half a page long, it looked like. It was just one of those deals where I didn't quite have all my motor control functions, and then, I knew things were going to be a little different from now on. But different or not, I'm alive today because of what those two men did in my vehicle. Their quick reactions and their bravery under fire. Cooler heads decided to get me out of there. Had they decided not to do anything at all, because the medevac was denied, I would have succumbed to my wounds right there, and I wouldn't be here doing this broadcast right now. So I'm very grateful for those two men. But what really grinds my gears about this whole situation is that when I got back to my unit decided that, well, they hadn't acted with enough bravery. And my chain of command decided that, well, because there was nobody really able to confirm everything that I was saying, that they decided that those two men couldn't actually be recognized formally because there was no corroboration other than the three people that were involved in the situation. Honestly, that's the biggest tragedy of my entire military career. And I say career because I probably would have stayed in as much as I hated it. And I did hate it. I hated it with a passion. There were so many regulations and so many hoops you had to jump through in order to get through it. I probably would have stayed in, you know, uh, not because of guilt, but because I truly believed what I was doing in the Army was a good thing, and it was a positive influence on my life. My problem with this whole situation is, like I said, I have my life. I have two daughters. One that's 18 months now, and I have a beautiful wife, and I have another daughter on the way. She'll be born in April of 2011, and I would have either one of those had it not been for these two men. And I guess why I decided to put this on the radio is because, or out there on the air, is because they may have impacted my life in a very dramatic way, but you listening out there can impact somebody's life in some kind of positive way, one way or another. Yeah, it doesn't have to be as dramatic as, Staff Sergeant Normandin and Sergeant Charleston, but you can still have a very significant impact on people's lives with something simple as a smile. I've I've experienced, maybe not necessarily at OU or Ottawa University, but I've experienced some snide things that's happened, from my days at community college after I've gotten out of the Army. Not necessarily to me, but to other people. And it doesn't really help anything. It doesn't make anything better. And I think if you're not making your life better or somebody else's life better, you are seriously causing a very major injustice in the world. And I think it needs to be addressed. And I think we all need to uh, remember the better things in life and quit trying to make misery loves company. That's all I have. Thank you for listening.